Conceived around the time he finished production on his first film, THX 1138, George Lucas spent years developing his original space opera film that you've probably never heard of, called Star Wars, which was intended to be a standalone movie. It started filming in 1976 with a budget of a mere $11 million, and near none of the crew had any faith in the production. They thought that George Lucas was making this terrible movie. The movie then came out, and on its first screening, nearly everybody hated it. The movie then released, and surprisingly, gained a legacy of being one of the greatest films of all time. It was also a massive commercial success, and went on to become, at the time, the highest grossing film of all time. So after recognising the money that could be made from this IP, they made a sequel. Although people loved the original and they thought that this film would be good, few could imagine the follow-up being better. But yet somehow, not only did The Empire Strikes Back live up to the original, it was, in my and most others' opinion, better than the original. And then there was a third film, which although wasn't quite as good as the other two, it was still a near-perfect film. Since George Lucas had proven himself to be so talented with this Star Wars universe not once, not twice, but 3 times, everyone had a lot of faith that he would deliver a great Star Wars movie. After all, he had spent years writing this 4th movie. There was so much hype around this movie too, an enormous anticipation, which at the time of the movie's release had been unheard of. People were dying to see the Phantom Menace. And then, they saw the movie, and the fans were left in utter shock and horror by the movie's end product. Fans spent many years trying to process their feelings and convince themselves that they liked the movie more than they actually did. But after a long time to process their feelings, fans came to the acceptance that the movie truly did suck. But fast forward to 2019, fans were mad by how the sequel trilogy had ended, so they started to convince themselves that The Phantom Menace was actually a good movie. Look, I believe that the fans were just angry with the present and were seeing things through rose-coloured glasses the way that we humans often behave when we are annoyed about something bad. But let's take those rose-coloured glasses off here. Let's be real. I truly believe that this movie is a terrible piece of garbage, and that by making the movie the way he did, George Lucas destroyed Star Wars. Let me explain. Hi all, I'm the Grinning Critic, and I love talking about movies with a grin. But unfortunately, I cannot talk about The Phantom Menace with a grin, as I really strongly dislike this movie. So I'm gonna have to talk about the movie with a frown. Let's begin with a review. Anyway, so this movie starts out, and within the opening minutes of the movie, it's pretty clear that something's wrong. We see these weird-looking alien creatures whose mouths fail to even move in sync with the dialogue, and then this fight breaks out of this ship, and the main heroes in the movie just fight villains on the ship who are these robots that are so obviously CGI. So that brings me to my first big complaint about this movie, the CGI! It's painful to look at, and it makes the movie feel so incredibly dated. Now, this movie came out in 1999, when CGI wasn't very sophisticated, so making a movie that relies on this technology when it hasn't been properly developed at the time makes the movie feel extremely dated. There's a reason why James Cameron waited many years to make Avatar. Now, I'm well aware that there are many movies that use effects that weren't properly developed at the time when the movie was made, and many of those movies I've got no real issues with the effects. And that's because either A, there was a charm to using the effects to the level in which the filmmakers chose to use the effects of that movie, or B, the effects used were good or great, or even groundbreaking at the time in which the movie came out. For The Phantom Menace, I can't say that either of these statements are true. There is no charm whatsoever to watch these ugly CGI robots or ships on the screen. In fact, it frequently takes you out of the movie. And let's be real here, CGI was a lot better in a lot of other movies that came out at the same time of The Phantom Menace than The Phantom Menace. Now, this movie is terrible from a technical standpoint, not only in the CGI, but also in the acting. The acting, it's terrible in this film. Every performance but Jar Jar is so dry and so boring. It's clear that George Lucas was making a movie for kids, because he's got Jar Jar in the movie. But the movie's about all this political stuff with this trade federation that kids cannot even care of. How do you expect a kid to pay attention to any of that nonsense? Now, from a screenwriting perspective, this movie is just terrible, and I really mean that. The movie is terrible in every single way. Now, I'll talk about the villain in this film, Darth Maul. Why does anyone defend this guy? What was George Lucas thinking with this guy? Darth Maul is flat out one of the worst villains ever. Listen, here is why. There is no development to his character at all. He does nothing but lurk around in the background for a few shots. He barely even says a line of dialogue. And then, out of the blue, he just fights our protagonist in this Duel of the Fates scene, and I'm not gonna lie, I do love this scene. It is a fantastic scene. I love the fight choreography here. It's phenomenally directed. But notice that I have been using the word scene here. That's because, as an individual scene, everything about it, and I really mean this, everything about it except what happens at the end, is fantastic. I love it. But as there has been zero build-up to this scene, it lacks a sense of earned tension and conflict, which is what you need for a good fight. I'll give you an example. Let's just imagine that the final battle in Infinity War had just happened out of the blue. You didn't know anything about Thanos, and you just knew that the Avengers were the good guys. All you'd seen was Thanos lurking in the background a few times, behind them. That would make the scene terrible. But because you've got context, you know why the Avengers are fighting Thanos. That's what helps make that scene more awesome, because you feel a sense of earned tension and conflict in that scene. Now, up till now, I've just been complaining as to how there are a lot of things that bug me in this movie. But the movie was just a bad movie. It didn't do anything offensive. It was only at this point that it actually did something offensive. So when Qui-Gon's dying after being attacked by Darth Maul, he forces Obi-Wan to train Anakin. Now, throughout this movie and all those boring meetings with the Jedi with the overexposed lighting, they refuse to let Anakin train, as Yoda knows who he'll become. Yet the moment Obi-Wan tells Yoda that Qui-Gon insisted that Anakin receive the training, he agrees to let Anakin be trained. Now, what I really hate about the scene is not Yoda changing his mind. Well, I do hate that because it makes no sense. But I hate the fact that Obi-Wan and Anakin only fought side by side because Obi-Wan was forced to. That ruined Star Wars for me. And I find it so insulting for this to be the case. It really ruins the movie for me. And it makes it sad. It makes it sad. It makes the original trilogy sad, knowing that all this conflict between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader only happened because Obi-Wan was forced to train with him. I hate that. Okay, so now as far as giving this movie a grade, I've got to be somewhat mature about this. I just want to give the movie an F because I'm really angry with a lot of the things that it did. But the movie isn't that bad. There's a fantastic Duel of the Fates lightsaber fight scene that I do love. There's some great music in it from John Williams. Although he did use the music in the originals, it's still great hearing that music. And there's a couple of fun scenes with R2-D2 and C-3PO. But other than that, there's really nothing in this movie. I'm gonna give The Phantom Menace a D. This is the most disappointing movie of all time. I just wish this movie was better. Okay, if you love or like The Phantom Menace, please let me know in the comment section why you like or love this movie. I really want to hear it. I really want to love this movie. But I just can't. I hate it. I want you to be the one that convinces me. Please, share your opinions. Let me know. I want to love it. Thanks for watching, and I'm the Grinning Critic, and don't forget to subscribe to me.